Hello, everyone. This is Paula. This is the Common Book Show. We're here today with Richard and Brother James and mystery guest, and of course my son Tom on drums. And we are here to, the first thing we're going to do today, we're going to start the show off with a tribute for Richard Wicca that Brother James has come up with, and he made this nice presentation piece for Richard. So we're going to show that on air, Richard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. While Brother James reads it for us.
Okay, I'd be honored to. I'd be honored to honor Richard Wicca. Richard Wicca, a man of honor, arms outstretched so that others may enter the safety of his world, while allowing others to express their art so that they may reap the rewards of their talents, unencumbered by the ego of a humble man, a man respectful of nature, a man with a daily plan to make a difference in a challenging world, a man who sets an example about what it means to sacrifice for the good of all, cherishing what cannot be held in hand, while making a stand against waste without haste, with a heart filled with love.
It's beautiful.
Bravo.
That is beautiful.
There's
Plus,
a picture that goes with that. Can we see?
Yeah, you can see it if you
Oh,
hold that up. You can see it.
Okay, well,
It's beautiful.
It's always.
Yeah, I'll show you on the overhead.
You know what? Let Richard show it.
Yeah, there's the
There it
picture.
is, right.
That looks that's a photograph you took that Richard took, right?
Richard took, yeah.
Yeah. That's-
And I sent it to my daughter, and she did the artwork on it, and then I took it and I sent it to
So it's
FedEx. A little pitch
kind of
for
a
FedEx.
collaborative effort with you and your daughter.
Yeah.
Free service at FedEx. I took it to FedEx,
Hmm.
and they couldn't print it because the resolution of the print was wrong.
Hmm.
So I had to send it back to my daughter. She had to set up the resolution again.
Hmm.
Then I had to go back to her again, send it to them again, go back again and get it changed and to black and white and then color.
Wow.
And I found a frame and did it to honor Richard Wicca,
Thank you.
It's
man
beautiful.
of honor. It says it right here. It says it's in print now.
in print.
Oh,
I think you
Unencumbered.
captured his spirit. I mean, I think that's really beautiful. Those are beautiful words and appropriate and true.
It was very easy to do.
I think they should go under the Beth Kennedy painting. Don't you think
I
that'd be a
think
good
so.
spot?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
That would be perfect. That's a good coupling. That's very nice. So today I am reading. I'm reading this giant book of short stories. I know it looks weird. I have a
Tip it
patch.
that way.
I have a patch on my. This way.
Yeah, that way, see?
Okay.
Now we can see it.
I have a patch on my hand. That's why I have a glove on. So anyway, I like short stories. They don't take a lot of. You don't have to commit to a book. It's like at the most it'll be a couple nights of reading. I read before I go to sleep. And there's one piece of the story that I thought would be good to share. There's this. It's called not dual birthdays. Wait a minute. Hang on a second.
Are those stories selected by John Updike? So these are many authors, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
So this particular story is called Double Birthday, and it's about a man who was a doctor, and he was he used to do work for people who were musicians, and he would do it for free. So he didn't make a lot of money. He lived a simple life, and he didn't have money at the end. So this whole family had been very rich, and the son got a hold of the money, and the son didn't value money. He valued other things. So this is how he views his life.
Is this the father or the son?
There was the uncle who was the doctor. So
Okay.
the uncle has a birthday and he's 90 something, and the nephew has a birthday and they share it. So this is the nephew, his point of view. He said, he thought he had had the best of it. He had gone a-maying while it was May. This solid comfort, this iron-bound security didn't appeal to him much. These massive houses, after all, held nothing but the heavy domestic routine, all the frictions and jealousies and discontents of family life. Albert felt light and free going up the hill in his thin overcoat. He believed that he had had a more interesting life than most of his friends who owned real estate. He could still amuse himself, and he had lived to the full all the revolutions in art and music and that his period covered. He wouldn't at any moment exchange his life and his memories of his teacher, Raphael Josfri, for instance, for any one of these massive houses and the life of a man who paid the upkeep. If Metasopheles were to emerge from the rhododendrons and stand behind his shoulder with such an offer, he wouldn't hesitate. Money? Oh yes, he would like to have some, but not what went with it.
So what does that
There's
mean?
a price.
What do you?
Yeah, this man lived a life that his values were different. He did not have a value for what other people valued, like having a big house with a lot of things in it, and then all those responsibilities that go along with that. You know, having to make sure the grounds are taken care of, having to make sure that the insides are taken care of, buying all the furniture, So he lived a life of art and music and experience, and he feels that in that he has had a better life than somebody who has to guard their belongings.
I find that astonishing. Because today I was listening to a lecture from Neil Howe. He's a demographic researcher.
Uh-huh.
So what he does basically is he looks at all the surveys that have been taken, in as many as he can find over the decades and decades and decades, and he tries to see a pattern. And he was talking about some of the interesting things he found. And it ties into what you just said.
Oh, really?
Here's what he said in his lecture. In 1970, if you ask someone age 18 to 29, what is more important, developing a meaningful philosophy of life or being very well off financially?
Mm-hmm.
The answer was 3-1 for the first option. I want the meaningful philosophy of life. 15 years later, go around and ask the same question. The answer was 2-1 for being financially well off. What happened?
Well, they realize they can't live on information, wisdom, or even knowledge without acting some profession out, coming to some realization that they need to make a living. As much as they loved art, they don't want to be a starving artist.
Well, you have to make a living. You have to be able to eat, and you have to be able to pay your bills, and you have to be able to live safely indoors. But you don't have to accumulate wealth. There is no reason for accumulation of wealth, because if you have an excess, that excess does not make you happier. That excess makes you a prisoner of it.
Well, I'd like to be a prisoner for a while.
What are the dates of those two surveys?
The first one was in 1970.
Yeah.
The second one was in 1985.
Well, 85 was the Reaganomics
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So I would say that people were educated differently,
And
right?
right.
By the society.
Right. The people who were the icons of society were different. In the 70s, it was the counterculture. In 1970 and 1985, it was the people who were making money and Wall Street and things like that. It wasn't the same focus.
Well, was it the same people they interviewed later, or was it different?
Highly unlikely.
No,
Yeah.
because then they wouldn't have been.
They wouldn't have been in the age
the
bracket.
same
Yeah.
the right age bracket.
I wonder what sort of response they would get today. Because, today there's so much anxiety and depression and unhappiness that it seems to have escalated, exponentially. I think people are looking for more meaning in their lives now. I wonder if that would be reflected in answer to that question.
I find, well, for the most part, I find people in the age range of like 18 to like 30, they have a different, their value system is different. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the woke culture to the degree that we have it, because it has taken our freedom away.
Gone too far, maybe.
In a lot of ways. But I do think that they are more interested in a healthy work-life balance They want to have a personal life as well as having a life with, being able to afford things that they need. But the people I talk to, I feel that they're kind of like it's not counterculture like the late 60s and early 70s, like we were kind of counterculture, right? It's a little different. It's like they fit into society, but they're making their own rules for how they do it.
Well, they look at their parents, their grandparents, and they're looking at them as, wow, they failed. Grandpa's doing drugs, mom is cheating. Somebody's failed, they can't keep a job, and they look, and there's no moral guidance for a lot of people. And now they're evaluating their life and saying, well, all these things that I had an example around me, well, that stuff, it didn't work for them. All the
Well,
the church,
I think we all
a lot
look.
of things.
I think we all look at our parents and we say we want to do things differently. I don't think there's been a
Well,
generation
I did
since Job.
when I was 10, I was thinking that.
Yeah, but I know that my sisters, because I have sisters who were 10 years older than me, and I got to watch their lives develop. They got married, they had children, and it seemed like their lives were very dreary. Sorry if you're watching. But they seemed dreary to me as a teenager, as a young person. I said, I don't see that for myself. I can't see myself living that life. That seems, even though I ended up having a child early, I never took that as a stopping point for my own development.
Well, that was more acceptable going back. You're talking the 60s, 70s. That for me, you got out of high school. If you didn't, no matter what you did, you were facing Vietnam, and you had to go in the. It was normal. You get out, get out of school, you go into the service, do your time, you come out, get married, have a kid, and start a family life. You get a house, and that was the norm back then.
Right. It was the norm. It certainly was the norm, but it didn't appeal to me, and maybe because I got to see it at such close range. My siblings.
Were you rebellious? Are you saying, or what?
I don't look at it as rebellious. I look at it as looking at,
Like you're thinking there's a better way.
there's got to be a better way to do this because this does not look like it doesn't look like what I want.
Well, it seems like war and these things influence all of us in the cultural ways, right? You're talking about different culture, cancel culture now. You're talking woke. You're talking all of this. Everybody's throwing all of these labels and terminologies around. I don't even understand a lot of it. I mean, there's a big confusion about what woke is.
Well,
what
because
woke is. What
because
is
we are
woke?
we
What does it
are
mean?
we are a different generation. But the whole thing is, I don't think that we can go back into the archives of the past and rewrite it according to how we feel now in this decade.
Well, how does woke affect you, though, in your decisions or your happiness or anything?
Because all right, I'll give you an example. I'm doing a presentation in March, and I'm planning on talking about race. And when I forgot who I told. Oh, I told my niece, who is she's a very liberal, intelligent. She's a lawyer. She lives out in Oregon. She says, make sure you're not canceled. And I said, you know what? I don't care if I'm canceled. I said, I'm telling my truth. I'm telling how I learned about race. And if somebody can't handle that, I don't care if they don't want to have me in their life. What will that matter to me? I want, and I'm gonna preface it that way. Nobody is born with ideas. We all get the ideas of our parents, and if we're smart enough, and if we are thoughtful enough, we'll come up with our own ideas at some point. I said, and this is how I learned about race and about what's appropriate. Well, how I went from thinking that black people were something else to understanding that they're not, and why I had to dig through all of that material until I got to that point because of our culture and the bombardment and on media and anything that you read. Like Greg would say to me, why, when you read a book, if the character is white, they never tell you he's white. But if he's black, they tell you. Why is that?
Bias.
Well, Right, because you want people to think a certain thing about this person.
Or it was written by a white person who lives in a largely white culture, and that for them, seeing a black or Asian or Hispanic person was out of the normal.
Right.
It was unusual,
Exactly.
right? So,
And until Greg said that to me, it never occurred to me. I said, you mean to tell me that when there's the character development, they don't say the person's white? And I never noticed it because I'm white, and because I just assumed they were white until they said they were black, or they said they were Asian, or or they had an unusual name.
Well, now it's used as a dog whistle for the racist. You right away they want to push their agenda of hatred that they learned from their ancestors, the grandparents, the dad, grandpappy, hollering out, we're going to do justice.
But these are people who are adults and who should know better because they should have done their own. They should have done their own.
You should be president.
Yeah. No, thank you. No, the skeletons in my closet are screaming right now.
Okay. Yeah, all of us.
But anyway, that's how wokeness affects me at this
Well,
point
but
because
define woke.
because they're
Define
trying
woke.
people are trying to say to me, don't talk about race because you're going to be people are going to reject you or respond to you in a certain way. I'm not going there.
Well, I wrote a poem and sent it to somebody in Florida. And they liked the poem, but they said, don't use the word woke. And I still don't know why. I've got to call the person and find out. But I know they're in the belly of the beast down there. There's a lot going on, a lot of hatred, a lot of division, a lot of racism.
Yeah. Well,
and anger.
basically woke means that you are, and no one, I'm sorry, everybody has bias. Bias is just a thing that we have because we have had different experiences, so it's to live without bias and to be able to be so pure and so clean that you have nothing on your slate.
Well,
But you can't because we all have our own ideas based on our own experiences. That does not exist.
Well, there's people hating woke. I mean, you got political parties right now hating people that are woke.
Because they want to
spread hatred. I think.
Right. They don't want people to get they're preying on getting people to hate each other. They want that. They want that division. They don't want people to come together. I was kind of hoping by this time we'd just have one race. I figured, people are going to intermarry and there's just going to be one race. It didn't happen.
it seems to me that one big problem is people identify so strongly with an ideology that transcends their humanity. And as a teacher, I teach very controversial things, and I never have any problems with it. And I'm very direct and blunt. And because I address our shared humanity, I don't have issues with it.
Yeah,
and I teach kids from Islamic countries. I teach refugees. I teach black kids, white kids, Hispanic kids, Asian kids, and I don't have an issue with it.
Right. It's.
And I'm the least woke guy around.
To be able to look at each person as an individual is, I think, the goal. I mean, if that's woke, I don't know, because when you're talking, it's gotten some bad connotations. You've got, it's got bad connotations now because they don't want people coming on campus that have different ideas. I mean, where else do you get these different ideas? You can disagree with them, but you should hear them out. And things are getting completely canceled, and we can't do that.
When I was in high school, or even younger, I was taught in school that we are a melting pot here in America, of all creeds, all nationalities. Everybody comes from all over the world to be here, to be free, to live under a constitution, right? And now they're saying, the white nationals are saying, no, it's a white Christian nation, the Christo nationals.
It's not. We are not a Christian.
It never
nation.
was intended to be that. Although I like it. Yes, that would be wonderful if we were all moral. We had a beautiful relationship with each other.
Christian doesn't mean moral. people can
Well,
be
I'm finding that
moral.
out, yeah.
People can be moral no matter what their belief system is, even if they have no belief system.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is-
morality is
yeah.
not religion.
Well, these people that claim they are Christians, these Christo fascists, they are the ones dictating policy and calling people, making woke sound like it's an evil word because it refers back to the black community back in the 40s and 50s when there was a movement and they called it woke. They
No.
said, but now they're trying to bring it back because it's
No,
racist.
there was nothing.
Well, I
yeah.
read that.
Yeah, but it's a new concept that has to do with trying to make people without bias, and I don't think we are, as human beings, we don't have any choice.
I think it creates hatred. It creates hatred and division. Say you're woke, you're not woke. Okay, you're my enemy. You're my enemy.
Well, that's
It's
because of
division.
that's because of the politics right now. You know, we can't. It's hard to get around those politics. Well, what did you think, Richard, about Trump being excluded from the Colorado?
It's a nice start. I hope
Yeah.
other states follow
Do you know
suit.
what I'm thinking? It's just like when the guy who was calling everybody McCarthy. It's just like when McCarthy was down on all these people for being communists or being involved with communists, and there were 7 Republicans that came forward finally and got rid of him. Now it looks like if Colorado can be the first place, and now other places are looking into doing the same thing. California, for instance.
Yeah. It's always easier when you're not the first.
Right. So if enough states, but the Supreme Court refused to rule on whether or not Trump's even can be convicted of a crime. They won't rule on that.
Well, they want the earlier court to rule on it first.
Yeah, it's just there's so much time.
Oh, you got to give Clarence Thomas time to take his trips all over the world by his big benefactors,
Yeah.
big billionaire buddies, paying him off. Can't you give him a break? Huh?
Yeah, I know.
That's
But-
why I feel like local politics is where it's really at. Like if all of us were more involved locally, nationally, at a grassroots level, I think it would be less likely that we would be at such odds with one another. Maybe I'm naive, but
No, not at all.
Yeah,
No, no.
I think it's true. It starts there, but there's so much. I think that people that get involved in politics, I think that no matter what their intentions are, even if they have the right intentions, you end up owing so many people favors by the time you get to the top. I mean, I don't know how Bernie Sanders kept himself clean all this time, but you owe people favors because they did something for you,
Yeah.
and it is quid pro quo.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. So you get tainted
Power corrupts.
as you go
Yeah.
up. You get So I don't know.
Well, world peace starts in your home with your neighbors, and as
That's
as
very
he
true.
just said, if you can't be at peace with
no,
your neighbor,
it starts
how?
in you. It starts in your
Thank you.
psyche.
Right. There
Carl
you go.
Jung, because I'm doing all
Psychology.
this psychology, I saw him in an interview recently, and this guy asked him, "What do you think of the future of the world?" And he said, "The world hangs on a thread." And he said, "It's not politics, it's the psyche." And he said, "We have to get that straight first. And when that goes, that's when everything will go."
Yeah.
And I think he's right. It starts here.
He's really unusual
and
man.
I think you do. It's that, which means education.
Yeah, education.
Yeah.
And as a people in this country, for some reason, we do not value education.
Well, I
And-
tried to educate my neighbor, and I says, "Keep your truck off my lawn, will you?" Finally he did it. He got it. We got along now.
Yeah.
It's all good.
So, Richard, I know you've got a list.
I have something seasonal, a Christmas story.
Okay.
1944, they're making a movie in Hollywood, and they bring in the songwriters Ralph Blaine and Hugh Martin. They say, "We're making this movie with Judy Garland. I want you to write some songs. We want one of them to be about Christmas." Okay? So Ralph Blaine writes the music, and he turns it over to the lyricist, Hugh Martin. Hugh Martin, I got to sit with this. It has to speak to me. The music has to speak. I got it. I know what it is. He writes it all out. They go to the table reading, right? And at the table reading, you have all the actors, you have the director, and then you have a piano player in there with the songwriter. And they say, "Okay, what do you got for this first number?" He says, "It's a song called Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." I think you've heard of that
Yes.
song.
Yeah.
Okay. They play it, and Judy Garland says, "I am not singing that song. It's a horrible song. Forget it. I'll walk off this movie before I say that." So the director says she's right. He said it's too depressing. He
It's
said
a sad song.
He said it's a good song, good melody, but you got to change the lyrics. So he went back and he changed the lyrics, and they found them acceptable. Look at the difference between the two sets of lyrics. I find this fascinating. This is the set that Judy Garland would not sing. "Have yourself a merry little Christmas. It may be your last.
Oh,
Next year, we might all be living in the past. No good times like the olden days, happy golden days of yore. Faithful friends who were dear to us will be dear to us no more."
Near to us no more.
Yeah, near to it. Thank you, Sen. Thank you. But at least we'll all be together if the Lord allows. From now on, we'll have to muddle through somehow. So
Wow.
he's wondering, like, what's wrong with those lyrics? Why are they so opposed to it? And he's asking his wife, he's asking his brother-in-law, he's asking everybody. And finally someone says to him, "You know what the problem with those lyrics is? You're telling people, enjoy the present Christmas, because next year's might not be as good." He said, "Why don't you change the lyrics so you say, enjoy the present? Who knows, next year's might be better." Look how it got changed. "Have yourself a merry little Christmas, let your heart be light. Next year, all our troubles might be out of sight." "Make the Yuletide gay. Next year, all our troubles will be miles away."
ah. So hope. He added hope.
Yeah, yes.
He
Yeah.
stirred in a little hope. With
It might be better.
And what did Judy Garland say after that?
well, she
I
did
want it. And
Yeah.
it became a #1 hit.
So that was written in 1944?
Yeah.
I thought that was older. I don't know why.
Yeah, 1944. The
Yeah.
movie was called Meet Me in St. Louis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the movie. MGM,
Ding,
glossy.
ding, ding
Yeah.
goes a trolley.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
So that's my that's my seasonal.
your contribution to our seasonal show.
Wow.
This is our seasonal
Great-
show, of
great
course.
story.
That's why I have my red Christmas glove on.
Now compare that with this other thing I found out this week. Pornhub.
Yeah.
They keep statistics on the searches that are made for what kind of videos people want to watch. And this is the first year they decided to release the statistics.
For Christmas?
I think
Yeah.
It's the end
I
of the
think-
year.
Yeah, right.
I think I heard something about this. Go ahead.
This is fascinating.
End of the year poll.
End of the
Wow.
year. What did people? What did they ask for more of? Increasing by 1,689%. Searches with the name Android,
Oh.
like Android sex,
Yeah.
etc.
So AI has had an impact on
Was there something in there
technology
about
and-
grandma sex too? There was.
I'll tell you all of them. This term went up by 344%. Therapy.
Really?
Really?
Therapist sex?
Oh, like therapist sex. Yeah. Okay.
This went up by 332%. Soldier.
Well, there's a lot of war that going around.
Hmm.
A lot of war going around. Maybe that's
Mature man or woman increased by 71%. That's where you heard the thing about grandma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Grandma porn.
And what's your interpretation? You think people are picking up with what's happening in the world and they're transforming it into their sexual fantasies?
probably.
Yeah.
Other television, internet, YouTube, X.
Well, there's a lot of there's like way too much porn out there. There's like way too much. You know, the all of the stuff like the fans only stuff.
Mhm.
You know, the weird. I mean, there's some weird stuff on like just listening to like people in the media talking about it. You know, they do things like they're breastfeeding dolls. And just showing their feet, you know, like just massaging their own feet, you know, and I mean, we know somebody who likes that. And, but just weird stuff, you know, like.
Well, it's like emotional wellness. It's like they they're missing something in their life, and it's not even sex. It's that closeness, that
Well,
that love.
I think that we're definitely at especially since COVID, we're at a low point for actual physical contact with people.
Yeah, well,
You know.
it certainly forced you to be with people that you might not have liked. So you might be searching for something different. Now that things are cooling off a little.
And it's so it's I mean I guess pornography serves a purpose. I'm not saying anything that does,
Well, it destroys young men.
but
I know. That's
but
a
it
fact.
but it can't. I
Scientific.
mean it can separate you from actual people.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
The young men are all going to shows.
And it also changes your expectations of what actual sex is like.
Well, that's what I mean
Yeah.
about young men going to these
Yeah.
girly shows. They want to look for a girl like that to bring home to mom, but they.
I don't think mom would like that.
That's what I mean. But I'm saying we couldn't bring home my day. You didn't bring home a woman like that. You
Yeah.
know?
There's a
And I'm not
book-
condemning anybody, okay,
Yeah.
or judging them. But it's a different
Yeah.
thing. It's a different time too. Right? How is it psychologically?
There's a book called Your Brain on Porn, and it shows how your neurotransmission gets hijacked. Your reward centers in your brain get
Yeah.
hijacked by being blasted with so much dopamine and whatever neurotransmitters.
Just like with drugs and
so
alcohol.
they've said that the brain of someone who's strongly addicted to porn and the brain of a person addicted to cocaine, they can't tell the difference with brain scans because it affects
It's
the
still
brain.
the same-
It affects
it's the
the
same
brain in
area.
the same way.
Yeah. Do you broach this?
Oh, sure I do. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that was part of one of the lessons that I taught in psychology. Yeah.
That's gotta be a tough
Absolutely.
one to-
Not if you're straightforward and direct. I mean, it's a human thing, right?
Right.
And the kids know. I mean, they're not.
Oh, yeah,
come on.
no.
They're not stupid. They're 17 years old.
Right.
They all know what I'm talking about. That's
Your
the book.
Brain on Porn.
Yeah.
Huh, Gary Wilson. That
Yeah.
name sounds familiar.
I have the audiobook version of that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's a lot of really good information in there. And when I did the unit on the brain, it tied into a lot of the things that he was talking about. So that's where I
Interesting,
found
yeah.
it relevant.
Yeah, because it's an addictive. It's a source of addiction, and that it's going to affect the same part of the brain. You know.
But it also enters in immorality based on people's religious views of it and a lot of guilt. I mean, as a young boy, I felt nothing but guilt.
Well, we were raised Catholic
Well,
too, and
I
that
was.
was all about guilt.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm saying. But there's more to it in the psyche,
Yeah.
as he brought up. There's a lot to it psychologically that impacts you as a young person.
Yeah,
And
but
then you grow up
see,
later and you realize, wow.
there's a difference.
It wasn't all true what they told you.
There's a difference between, to be able to take care of your own needs by yourself is a good thing. We were taught it wasn't. First
There's
of all,
guilt attached
the
to it. yeah.
girls were never even talked to about it because apparently they thought we would never do such a thing. But the boys, the boys were taught, that they were going to, you're going to go to hell, all this stuff. There's a reason if, I mean, I'm not religious, but one of the things that I use as a joke is if God didn't want us to masturbate, he would have made our arms shorter.
All right, everybody going to touch that one? No, thank you.
Do you remember the Woody Allen movie, Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex
Yeah.
But Were Afraid to Ask?
Yeah.
I recently saw that again, and it's I don't know, it's dated. It doesn't
Yeah.
hold up all the way, but it addresses a lot of those themes
Yeah, I know.
in a funny way.
Greg was working on a book about Woody Allen for a while, so we were watching a lot of Woody Allen
okay.
films, but that kind of waned. But anyway, it's so. What now that you have a little free time? Are you reading anything?
No, I'm gonna finish the course. I have to do abnormal behavior and social psychology, and that's going to be a massive unit.
yeah.
And I still have to write a test, review material, a quiz, one more homework assignment in the unit I'm finishing now, and then start that. So it's another 50 hours of solid
Yeah.
work at least.
Well, but you're reading a lot of interesting stuff. in
Oh,
order
I've
to
never
do
learned
this.
so much in such a short period of time. No, I mean,
It's
really.
fascinating stuff, yeah.
It's great.
It is fascinating.
In 4 months, in my entire life, I've never had to learn that much in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
So it's been really rewarding in that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of good books out there for the non-psychologist. Just explaining things. There's a lot of.
Oh.
For a while, I was on a roll with books like that. I love Jung. I don't agree with everything he has to
No.
say. He's he's out there. He's got a lot of weird ideas, but I do like the way he thinks.
He was friends with Freud. Do you know why they split?
Yeah, wasn't it about the sexual component?
For Freud told Jung, he said, you're the only one, because at that time Freud was persona non grata, and Jung was told, if you keep promoting this man's ideas, your academic career is at risk. And he continued to do it, like you do with the whole woke thing.
Yeah.
You're yourself, so he was authentic. And at one point, Freud directly told Jung, he said, you're the only one who can carry on my mission in life. And he said, what's your mission? And he said, we must make it a dogma that behavior and personality stem from sexual repression in childhood. That's the whole thing. And he didn't agree with
No,
him.
he didn't.
And it's obvious this is obviously wrong. And they split. Their friendship split, and Jung went in a very different direction, recognizing that that's part of the picture, and not in childhood. Your brain isn't fully developed when you're 1 year
Yeah.
old to even understand those things. But
Richard, could you look up the Jung? It's like it's an autobiography. That's something I think that the mystery guest would enjoy reading.
reflections and I've been listening to it recently.
Oh, yeah,
Memories, reflections, and dreams.
Yeah, memories, reflections, and
Fantastic.
dreams.
What a great book!
Oh,
huh?
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Amazing, and I got it because of you. I have the audio book.
Yeah.
You
Oh, I
maybe
recommended
6 months
okay.
ago you recommended
Yeah,
it.
when I found out
And
you were
it's
doing
phenomenal.
It's
and
great,
And
I
a
know.
couple synchronous things occurred to me because Jung talks about synchronicity.
Oh, yeah.
Things just happen, and you
Yeah, well, he
in a pattern.
believes there's some kind of
Well,
energy or something, energy
yeah.
force that the same thing with the I Ching. He thinks that you can not maybe tell the future, but there's like a synchronicity with this kind of idea of cards and telling fortunes, not fortunes of the future, but reading things.
Yes.
Yeah, and he has
That's the book.
Awesome
That's the book.
book.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's synchronicity. The day that this happened to me, I was writing a section on their split and why Jung didn't approve of Freud's ideas. What I just told you about sexual
Yeah,
repression
that's
being
in
everything.
yeah, that's in this
And
book.
I was thinking of a way, how can I express that? How can I say this in my notes? So I went to bed thinking about that. And sometimes when I go to bed, I'll put an audio book on quietly because if the author's voice is soothing, and in that particular case,
Yeah.
the narrator, I should say,
yeah.
is a soothing voice. When I woke up, just before work, before my alarm clock went off, the book was still going because it's like 22 hours. And when I woke up, that's exactly what he was saying. He was saying the reason Freud and I split is, and he said Freud was a great man, but he was very neurotic and he was obsessed with sexual repression.
Yeah.
So I used that line in my notes, and it was like the thing I was thinking about when I went to bed. When I woke up, boom, that was.
But you know what?
I mean, it was a coincidence,
It is
it was a
coincidence.
great coincidence.
But we've
you know?
also talked about how you ask yourself a question before bed, and sometimes you wake up with the answer. Like your brain will mull it over in some weird subconscious way, and you will have an answer to your question in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's not magic. It's your brain working on it while you're sleeping,
like
which
the
is
double
really
helix.
cool.
Who's the guy who came up with the DNA? What's his name? Because it happened in a dream. He was
Yeah.
working on the problem, and he saw it in a dream, and he woke up and.
Wow.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I've had a lot of where I had a problem working on it, and I said, okay, this is what I need. I need a solution to this problem, or I need a last line for this poem, or I need to know how to start this story, and I'll wake up with it. And I mean, have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, I have studied Reiki, and I am a Reiki master. I have a certificate. And I've studied yoga for 50 years. And what I studied was because when I got into martial arts, I wanted to understand myself, my psyche. I want to understand the mental part of the art.
Yeah.
So I got deep into mesmerism, occultism, and understanding things like what you're talking about. We are magnetic beings, right? We are electromagnetic beings, and our thoughts are electromagnetic. They have a positive and negative. And when you desire consciously to know something, that all the information in the universe is out there for us to pick up on. Anybody that writes a lot, like yourself, or like you just said, it's there the next day. Well, you magnetically,
Yeah,
you're looking for like thoughts that you want to relate to, and they will come to you.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. It's mysterious.
Yeah,
and
we
it sounds
had
magical.
we had
but
that
it's
this
real.
conversation last week about Emily's Tooth, about Emily Dickinson, and this idea that ideas are free floating electrical currents, and I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I don't know that
Well, you can't see thoughts, but they're there. That's the whole point. So why everything we live in a material world, thoughts can't be seen, just like many other things can't be seen in life.
Yeah.
Right? Like you say, it takes a rainbow to
and
show things.
thank God nobody can read our minds.
Well, they have machines now.
Not yet.
AI. They have AI
Yeah.
that can emulate the mind of a human being, and can actually will have the ability. AI is really not AI now. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence. It's regenerative. It's what you put into that and program it to think and know.
Right.
It's more like for machine learning at this point. But that's where they're going with it. That's what Elon Musk is warning about. He is, he's way ahead of everybody now. He's saying that's the danger. That's where the danger of the devil and the darkness come in. That these machines will be able to do things like this and think things like this.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting the next few years with AI. I don't know. I don't know where I stand on it. I think there's a lot of good applications for it, but just like anything else,
Well, I don't want a machine reading my mind. That I will tell you.
I don't want. I love the idea that I can sit here and think anything I want and nobody knows what I'm thinking.
Oh, we know, Paula.
I don't like the idea that somebody could, but I would like to see my dreams played back. I'd like to see your dreams played back.
Did you ever see the movie Until the End of the World? Mm-mm. What a fantastic film. It was released in 1990-91 and in a very shortened version. It's like a 5-hour movie. And maybe 10 years ago, they released the full version. It's phenomenal. And what it's about a guy who's going around the world trying to, how did it work? His mother was blind and his father was a scientist played by Max von Sydow, and he was trying to invent this machine that could help blind people see. Okay, and in the process, this machine is able to record people's dreams.
Wow.
So what happens is people now look. Wait till you hear how prescient this is. It's quite amazing.
Have you seen this, Richard?
People get addicted to their own dreams, and in the
Wow.
movie, this is how many years before cell phones?
Yeah.
There's a scene in the movie where all these people are addicted, and they're all like this, and they won't talk to each other. And I saw the movie with Colleen O'Mara. And we both go, oh my God, like that's what everybody's like. And the whole audience was laughing because everybody got the joke, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a joke in 1991 or whenever.
Did you like this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really
but
good.
the 2-hour 38 is not the movie. It's a completely different film. It's a totally different movie. The 5-hour version is a whole different.
Oh, there's a
experience.
shortened and a long version.
Yeah, the one you saw was 2 hours and 38 minutes. The long version was released in the last 10 years or so.
I see.
It's a totally different experience.
Yeah.
But that I just the thought of that, this.
Yeah, but I've always
Seeing your
I've
own
always
dreams.
thought that it would be. I mean, it would probably be frightening too, because I think there's a lot of your fears and your anxieties will come out in your dreams, and you might not remember them because your brain decides not to remember them.
Well, they say they're going to be able to take criminals and then just ID them. The machine will ID them as a person who was thinking a certain type of thought, a certain electromagnetic pattern. It's probably similar to the dream type of retrieval or whatever memory. And they can actually see on a machine that person is thinking these kind of thoughts based on the colors of their aura. Because feelings are in color, blue and red is obviously anger. Blue is very calm. Green is sort of active. And they actually do they radiate from your chakras. And these centers give out who you are. To somebody that's psychic, and there's people that can see that. I mean, I can't see that, but there are people that
Right.
that can.
I've heard people
And
say.
Kirlian photography
yeah.
is the technology that makes it possible now, kind of a more new age. That's been around. I did some experimentation with that 50 years ago. The Kirlian photography, when I was doing martial arts, I took my energy, my chi, and I put it straight down through the machine. and I focused that I was going through the machine. And then the next picture I took is I was looking around, dispersing my attention. And when you got, I can show you sometime, the pictures that the one is concentrated and dark off my fingers. And the next time I was looking around, you could see the energy flowing all around in different directions. So we are always aware.
Do you
well,
know
not
about this photography, Richard?
Kirlian?
Not his story, but I've heard of this Karelian photography.
Okay,
It was
yeah.
50 years ago, and Russia really started. There was the psychic war going on back then, and they were one of the originators, actually, of it earlier. And then we copied it, and we brought their scientists here after the war to want to know what's on people's minds.
There's so many things I don't know about.
It's fascinating. It's just interesting stuff,
So we had your Christmas story. Now
Yeah.
what else do you have on your list?
The Wright brothers.
Okay.
The day before they took their flight,
Uh-huh.
Orville, of course, the word got out, that they were going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
On the day before, Orville Wright was stopped in the street by an old gentleman.
Yeah.
Young man, if we were meant to fly, we would have been born with wings. Orville replied, but we were. It's called creativity.
That's awesome.
What
I love
happens,
that.
what happens if you're born with short arms?
You're screwed.
You have to get a good friend.
Oh, wow.
That would really cement the friendship, I'll tell you. So I like that thought.
That one?
Think about how. Oh, this is what I had this thought the other day. Okay, I know I go around the house singing all the time. I sing constantly. When I'm working, I'm singing, and I'm just so used to it. My mother always did it. It was something that I just got from her, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, before recorded music, people had to actually go someplace to hear music played, or they had to be able to read music and play it, or they had to be able to play by ear. And how would they even know to play by ear unless they heard the song? So the idea that you would be able to just pick up any song that, I've heard a million songs since I was born. And maybe I have 150 songs that I know the lyrics to, and I can just sing my heart out whenever I want to. But if you were born into a world that without recorded music, think about how silent that world would be.
And how precious and rare it would be to be exposed to a world of music, except in a musical culture.
Right. I mean, there are
Flamenco culture.
Right. Okay. So, or in
Brazil.
in Africa, they have
There.
call and response that
There you go.
that they do in the
Yeah.
fields, but they were musical. They were like little tunes, and you'd be able to repeat those tunes, but you couldn't just repeat tune like I do. I mean, every Beatles song, every song every Supreme song, everything I've heard, I can sing. And how does your voice know how to make the note? That's another question I
Yeah.
had. Because with a musical instrument, you have to know where to place your fingers. I mean,
Yeah.
you play guitar,
Yeah.
you know that you need to know how to make that note. But yet your voice, or if you whistle it, you can make that note without any training. How do we know how to do that? How does our voice know how to do that?
Well, the yogis explain it. It's like transcendental meditation, right? You focus on the sound of your voice, doing maybe a mantra of some type, anything, OM or whatever. And you do this, you do it all the time and all the time. And the more you listen to it, the more you're able to later on to get back to the original source of the voice itself. And that's where they find
Right.
Peace and some type of bliss.
Right,
I mean, I've never accomplished that.
Brother
but-
James, but even without that, what I'm saying is, for your voice, any song, like what's your favorite song? You have a favorite song?
Oh, it's a tough one. I don't have a favorite song.
I couldn't answer
All right.
that
How
question
about
either.
how about
Have
a-
yourself a merry little Christmas.
or
We'll take that.
How about
That's good.
how about just a Christmas carol, like Here Comes Santa Claus? How does our voice know? Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus way.
Well, you remember
That
it.
you remember
it.
the words, but how does your voice know how
Your
to
brain.
make that note?
The brain.
Well, as you're
But
saying,
how does your brain know how to make that note when you don't have you can adjust your throat?
they're vibrations.
Yes,
They're vibrations.
it's your nervous system.
So
Right.
it's
The
like probably
somatic-
how we learn language too. But, I mean, we learn language when we're children. We know how to make. I mean, if you were from a tribe in Africa and you had to make the sound, you would know. You can do that immediately. It's like it's even in the womb. You hear those noises. But with music, I just don't understand how we are able to make those sounds without any training.
Oh, you're like a musical instrument.
It's like a
Well,
musical
yeah.
instrument.
That's the miraculous thing about the brain. I mean, there's
Yeah.
86 billion neurons in your head that it's a universe that we just still don't understand. So
Yeah.
it's definitely in the mind. It's in the brain.
And
But-
and to get back to the dreams, if our minds are making up these dreams,
Mm-hmm.
why don't we know what the other people in the dream are thinking?
Have I ever had a dream where I thought I knew what someone else was thinking?
I don't. When I say something to somebody in a dream, I don't know what they're going to say back, but I'm making it up in my brain.
Well, I'm the observer of
I don't know.
myself in my dreams.
Yeah.
I'm always the observer. I'm always watching the dream.
Yeah, I see myself
So I'm- yeah,
outside
me
of
too.
my
I'm conscious of that.
outside of my
Yeah,
body
yeah.
sometimes.
And when it gets really weird, that's when you cut out. You just wake up.
But I just think to myself, if I'm making up this story, why don't I know all the parts?
Maybe you do.
I
They're just deep
Right.
down.
But it's
you
so
know?
weird
You have
that
to believe. you do.
unconscious mind.
Right. You-
Yeah.
Belief. Belief is everything.
so
Faith.
our brains are very complicated
Extremely.
and
But I'm sure, Paul, they've done studies of how musical memory works and how your somatic nervous system, which are the skeletal muscles, your brain tells your vocal cords to move in a certain way. It's astonishing, but I'm sure they've done studies
I'm
which part
sure.
of the brain stimulates that and how you process that, and it's memory coming to other things that you've
but it's
heard.
but it's
that-
little kids with no musical training.
Yeah.
If they hear a song, they can repeat.
can repeat it.
They
Yeah.
know that they can
Well-
make the notes that make that song.
Isn't language a music?
That's what I was saying. With our
right.
language skills, they say that we can, even when we're in the womb, we can hear the sounds that are being made outside,
Yeah.
the vibrations of our mother talking and
That's right.
of the other people. And we are forming that ability to speak that language before we're born.
Yeah. Do you know when that starts? 6 months.
How did you know that? It's part of your
Part of my
your
course.
thing.
6
Isn't
months,
that amazing?
They can, and a child's favorite sound is the voice of the mother. Like for a long time after they're born, that sound is the most comforting sound to a child.
Yeah,
because
that's-
they've heard that
Right,
voice.
in the vibration,
right?
and
the
they can
vibration
still
of
hear the
voice.
vibration when they're
Yeah.
out of the womb
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
It
yeah,
is.
but
We
there's
talked about that once, that the child being down there is closer to your unconsciousness, your unconscious self, your lower heart, your unconscious, your chakras of survival and procreation. That's where the baby is.
Mm-hmm.
So the baby is sensing the energy at the chakra levels of survival and
Well, it's
procreation
just, I mean,
of the mother, though.
but if
Sensing
you-
the mothers.
okay,
If the mother
s-
has fear, the baby's going to experience
so,
fear.
So if you put your hand on your chest or your hand on your stomach, you can feel the vibration of your own voice. You know, your whole body vibrates when you speak.
Right.
So that child knows that sound.
But I think it goes farther with the child because the child feels the fear, feels the joy.
Well,
You know,
they're
the feels.
actually in that trauma book I was reading. They did talk about that. They said that the infant, it's not a fetus at that point. What is it? The
It's a fetus at 9 weeks.
fetus at night,
An
and then
embryo, a zygote is the fertilized egg. Then an
zygote,
embryo
and
attaches
then
to
a
the mother's
okay.
uterine
So it's
wall
a fetus.
10 days
so
later.
the fetus,
Yeah.
the fetus experiences the trauma. of the person who's carrying it.
Just like the drug a person
But-
takes.
but-
or
Oh, yeah,
alcohol.
yeah.
But
That's the worst of it.
is the child, the fetuses, or
Yeah.
brain sufficiently developed to register that trauma?
Yeah,
I mean,
they said
that's,
that they're doing like trauma therapy now, and in the trauma therapy, they are able to ascertain like the parents' anxieties are passed to the child before the child's even born, and they're saying that that could be one of the reasons that some babies are really colicky and unhappy and nervous, is
Makes
that they experience that before birth.
So education starts in the womb,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Wow.
But I'm.
That's why it's sad to see somebody addicted to a serious drug. The baby's also addicted.
Oh yeah, I
You know?
know. That's. I
Yeah.
mean, and they're emotional.
Cigarettes or alcohol too. They're poisoning their own
Right.
children.
The emotional trauma from having to detox at birth. Yeah, I mean they're not going to be normal ever.
Yeah.
Or even what's been
That's
imprinted
horrible.
subconsciously on their mind at that
Yeah.
point. I'm not sure how much is conscious or unconscious at
Yeah.
that point, but as they grow and develop,
So, anyway, I'm. Everyone here is anyone celebrating Christmas and
Well, my cousin Gary's going to come over tomorrow about 5:15. I'm going to pick him up, and we're just going to have dinner together. But that's, and of course, I'm going to be here with Richard on Tuesday, which is a Christmas celebration.
okay.
And you're
I'll be
invited.
waiting for my
You guys
ship
are
to come
invited.
in.
You're waiting for your ship to come in.
I've been waiting for Santa Claus by the chimney for a long time.
Yeah,
come down here.
I have a tradition that I go to my daughter's house on Christmas morning, and the kids open up the presents that I buy for them, and then my daughter makes crepes, so I eat breakfast with them,
That's nice.
and then the rest of the day is I don't I'm not a big holiday person. So, this is better for me than a big family get together with everybody getting together, her father's family and her husband's family. That's not my cup of tea. That's
When you were a kid, was it a big thing?
Oh, it's I just sent the story to I sent it to Brian because Brian had told me a story about his family and holidays, and I sent him the story of why I don't like holidays. Because it was I was a subject of ridicule. During holidays. I mean,
How?
it was they thought they were funny, but they weren't funny because I was at an age. I was like these kids in school,
Yeah.
when you say something to somebody who was 14, it's different than if they were 21 or
Yeah.
25 and have a different mindset. But yeah, it was torturous. My holidays were torturous.
That's terrible.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's not the worst of it.
I was no. I've heard some of those stories.
Yeah.
I was fortunate in that, and I have a lot of great memories from holidays because I had a big family. No brothers or sisters, but lots of aunts and uncles and lots of
Thank you,
cousins.
Tom.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Tom. And I just remember holidays where you couldn't fit everybody in the same house, and everybody was eating at the dinner table, and it was such a different world, life from what
Yeah.
I have now. But there was just a cornucopia of people and food and
Well, when I was-
conversation and
yeah.
laughter, and
When
it
I was a little
joyful.
kid, before my father died, when I was a little kid, I liked holidays because everybody was happy. Everybody would come to the house and they were happy and they were having a beer and
Yeah.
and they were talking about, like, there was all this gossip, and I would listen and I try to figure out what was going on, and that was fun. But then once my dad died and things changed, it was also because I was a teenager and they didn't have any filters. There were no filters, so anything was a subject for conversation at
Yeah.
the dinner table. But, so what are you doing, Christmas, Brother James,
I am praying.
on Christmas?
Yes, I'm praying for the white nationals to come to their senses, because the only thing that can break the sorcerer's evil spell and those people that don't understand why they love evil and hatred, I'm praying for them, because prayer is the only thing that's going to break that bond.
I hope you're right, but I don't agree, but I hope you're right.
Well, I'm talking electromagnetically as a Reiki master.
Yeah.
I'm saying they're putting out energy, magnetizing these people's hearts. They're giving the bad people their hearts. And once you give the heart, you could even rationalize and say, well, I don't know why I did that, but it's too late. And they're going to regret what they're doing in the future. So I am praying for a change in a positive way.
They have to understand before they can regret. So we've got 10 seconds left. I just want to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. And bye. It's been nice.
Yep. Thanks, Paula.
Thank you, Paul.